What's up, my friend? Welcome back to another video, and today I'm so excited to share with you that I'm starting a brand new mini-series breaking down my Super Mario Galaxy inspired piece called Call to Adventure. So if you know me and my music at all, I've been heavily influenced by the Super Mario Galaxy series from Nintendo and classic Disney scores, and I wanted to break this down for you because I shared this on my channel a couple weeks ago, and people wanted to know kind of the nuts and bolts behind it. So we'll kind of do a three-part series. The first one breaking down the music theory, kind of the harmony behind it. The second one breaking down the actual arrangement and the orchestration, and then part 3 will finally tackle the mixing and the mastering portion to kind of how how we actually got the piece up to a polished final result. So today we are starting part 1. We're diving into the harmony, and I want to break down the theory for you. Hopefully it's not overly simplistic or overly complicated. I do believe in a nice balanced result to really take the listener on a complete journey from start to finish, and the best way to do that is through kind of analyzing some of our favorite scores that maybe do some of those things. So I just want to share my process with you here today first. Before we really dive into the nuts and bolts of it though, if you are interested in having like a tangible PDF guide to grab onto to really take you deeper into the nuts and bolts behind Disney and Nintendo's best scores, then I want to give you something completely free called How to Write Thematic Music Like Disney and Nintendo in 5 Simple Steps. So this is a guide I put together a little while ago, going over some of the core techniques that the Nintendo and Disney composers actually use to create that magical, whimsical adventure sort of sound, and how you can apply that to your own music as well. It's super practical. It's super helpful. A lot of my students have downloaded it and they found really useful. So I want to give it to you as well as a free gift for watching my video today. I really do appreciate it, and you can again keep it on hand as a guide whenever you want to start writing in this style. Hopefully it can give you a couple tips and tricks to refer to. So anyway, without further ado, let's kind of dive in. First of all, this piece is in the key of D flat major, and the structure overall is AABC. I didn't want to make it too long or too short. I just wanted to make it, a nice manageable length. So you can see 220 here is the length of the piece. And yeah, if you haven't already listened to the original, please feel free to do so on the channel. It's in one of my playlists called, I think it's like instrumental pieces. This should be there at the top of the playlist, Call to Adventure. And yeah, let's just dive into it. So again, the structure is AABC. We have an initial theme that is then repeated. Then we have a development theme, or the bridge section, you can consider it, then followed by the chorus, okay? After which the piece then ends with an outro. So let me just play the intro here for you on the official track, and then I'll break down the chords here. So here we go. Right, so you hear that natural step up from G flat to A flat, which is the 4 to the 5 chord, because we're in the key of D flat major. So we go from 4, then we go to 5, which naturally wants to go back to the 1 right away, right? But I personally like to kind of step my way up to the tonic through kind of a chain of different chords, different chord progressions. And in this case, we're also bringing in some modal mixture as well, because we have the A major chord and the B major chord, which are non-diatonic to the D flat major chord, or D flat major scale, I should say. And you notice here the spelling is a little bit different as well. If I wanted to write it completely accurately, I would have called this B double flat. And then this would be a C flat chord, C flat major chord. But just for the sake of simplicity, we'll call it A major and B major. So again, those are kind of like the flat 6 and the flat 7 chords in the key of D flat major, which adds a really nice non-diatonic color before we resolve to the key of D flat major. So if you take a look at the keyboard view, you can see we're stepping up one at a time. We're going from the 4 to the 5 to the flat 6 to the flat 7, because normally the 7 chord is a diminished chord, right? But we're flatting the 7, so we have this B major chord or C flat major chord, and then we head straight into the tonic. So already in the intro, we already have some color happening there with modal mixture, which is really common in Super Mario Galaxy scores, and even in the regular Mario tracks all the way from the very beginning. So let's move on to the A section. Here. And then we're back into the A prime. Okay, so this is a pretty simple structure. We'll start on the 1 chord. Then we have a D flat augmented chord. Okay, so this in particular, we have this chromatic rising from the A flat up to the A natural. And it kind of opens the world up just a little bit more because we're really focused on at home on the 1 chord. But as soon as we hear this augmented A natural, which is again non-diatonic, and then it leads up to the B flat in the 4 chord. So it kind of goes A flat, A natural, B flat. This has this steady ascension, which kind of evokes that sort of adventure, right? You're stepping up one at a time. It's like you're peeking out of the clouds almost, or you're peeking out of your tent or your house. What's actually going to happen? And so this natural ascending motion with that little chromatic movement really adds that sense of adventure, I think. So we go from A flat to A natural to G flat over D flat. So now you can see this chord is in second inversion because I wanted to keep the bass on the D flat. I'm basically establishing a D flat pedal point for the first 3 chords here. And then after that, that's when I release the grip from the bass and then I allow it to kind of move after that. So maybe we can hear that actually one more time and see. So here we go. Hear the D flat on the bottom, 1 chord, and then it goes dun, dun, dun. So it goes after the 4 chord, da, 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 then it go. So then we go 4, 3, 2, you know, so it has that perfect 4th jump and then it walks back down. And I just like the feeling of the melody and the overall chords being independent from the actual pedal point itself. So it feels like there's those independent elements kind of working together, but also working separately at the same time, which is kind of nice. And then after that, we go to the E flat minor, which is the 2 chord. So here we just have a traditional 2-5-1. So 2, a quick A flat sus4 with that D flat in there, which then resolves to the 3rd, which is C. Da, 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 da. And here we could also say D flat sus4, resolving to the regular 1 chord. And for brackets, by the way, I'm literally just I'm basically putting those as decorative sort of chords or suspension sort of chords or just transition chords, if you will. Whereas the chords that are also really close to it are kind of the main target chords that I'm aiming for. So here you can see A flat sus4 then resolves to A flat, which is the main chord of this beat. And then we resolve to the tonic, which is D flat. And then I also transition really quickly to a D flat 7, which then leads me to the 4 chord. Now the D flat 7 being a dominant 7, that naturally goes to the 4 chord, right? Because that's kind of like a secondary dominant with the G flat being the 4 chord. So the dominant 7th of that chord would be D flat, but then we have that 7th in there, which is the minor 7th, that's C flat, which then transitions very nicely to the B flat following it. So a lot of chromatic movement here allows the chords to feel really seamless and transition seamlessly from one to another. And then in the second half, which is, so here we go, we're at A flat, D flat. Now we start on the 4 chord. 4. So here we have 4, right? So this is basically 4, 5, but instead of going to the root position of the 5 chord, I still keep the 4 on the bottom. So this is in 3rd inversion now. And this kind of prevents the chord going back to 1 from going back to 1 because dominant 7th chords in 3rd inversion rarely go back to 1 because the 4 doesn't really want to go back to the 1 in this scenario. So instead we go to the 3 chord instead. So the bass note basically steps down a semitone, and there's other chord tones that are common between these 2 chords, right? So the F minor chord basically is an A flat major chord on the top if it's an F minor 7, which I should have written an F minor 7 there, but anyway. So we have 4 chord, we have 5 of 4, but instead of going to the 1, we step down to the 3 chord, then we go to the 6. So 3 going to 6 is very common. So F minor to the B flat minor chord, 3 to the 6, and then back down to the 2, right? So, and then the melody rises, and then here, instead of going straight to the dominant 7th chord right away, the melody is actually playing a D natural, which is non-diatonic because then it wants to release to the E flat right after that. So in this case, I actually treated the chord kind of like as an A flat diminished chord, which is very, very sad in the key of D flat major. Any diminished chord is usually pretty sad in a major context, but then it resolves to the major after that. So you notice the B and the D on top, or the C flat, if you want to call it that, then each rise up a semitone to resolve into the A flat major chord, or A flat 7 after that. Okay? Hopefully that kind of makes sense. So let me really quickly play this verse one more time for you, the A section. So diatonic, non-diatonic with the augmented, back diatonic with the 4 chord, so nice and comforted, 2, 5, to the 1, so nothing crazy going on here. We go to the 4 chord, 5 to the 4, so secondary dominant, 3 to the 6, 2 chord, and then here we have our diminished, A flat diminished, over the 5, resolving to the 5-7 into the 1. Same chord progression here, but just switching the orchestral ensemble, so there's a bit of contrast. 2, 5, 1. Here's where things change. So 4 to the 1, E major, D flat, or sorry, D over D sharp, D, E flat, to D flat. All right, so let's quickly pause there. So let's go over this part here. So let me just quickly play the second half of the A prime. All right, so here's where I wanted to throw in a little bit more modal mixture. But the main thing that makes it sound pretty seamless and flowing and consistent and cohesive is the fact that the bass is actually walking down one semitone at a time. So here we go, we have the G flat, we walk down to the F natural, we walk down another semitone to the E, down to the D sharp, down to the D. So basically we have a chain of semitones here, and the chords on top are basically just accompanying that with the melody also, you know, laying on top as well. And then we step down to tritone to the A flat. So that's a big jump, very, very contrasting. But as soon as we hit the A flat, then it tells the listener, oh, okay, now we've hit the 5 chord, which naturally wants to bring around the 1 chord, which would make a lot of sense in this context because it's the end of this phrase, right? So talking about the chords on top of that, we have the 4 chord, resolving to the 1 chord. I didn't just want to go back to the root position because that would be a little too final, too resolved. So going down to the first inversion, I love first inversion chords. Now here's where we have that modal mixture with the E major chord, which is basically a sharp 2 chord, if you will. So, but you can also think of this as the secondary dominant of the following chord, which is the B chord, right? Or C flat major chord. So again, the C flat major chord and D flat major is the flat 7. So here, we already have that bit of modal mixture we're heading towards with the B major chord. So why don't we just precede that with its dominant 7th chord or dominant chord, which would then be, sorry, no, it's not the dominant 7th chord actually. It's just the sharp 2, as I said. Yeah, it is the sharp 2 going down to the flat 7 basically. And by the way, yeah, forgive my little mispronunciation there, but when writing this piece of music, and which is the case for most of my music, I tend not to try to think about theory too much. You know, theory is always helpful to kind of put language and answers to specific things that you're hearing in your head. But at the end of the day, you don't want theory to be relied on specifically to write your piece of music. You want to trust your instincts. You want to go with what sounds good to you. But then if you're maybe stuck on something, then you can use theory to maybe rationalize or give yourself new ideas. But theory is just something to support and enhance your writing process rather than determining the entire writing process, in my opinion, okay? So anyway, yeah, we have this chromatic motion with that E to the D, or, you know, E to the B chord. So it's almost like a 4 to 1 chord in the key of B major. 4 to 1, yeah. And then instead of 5 to 1, it's 4 to 1. Then we have the D major chord. And then this is that tritone movement from the D to the A flat chord, which is the 5 to the 1. But all of that is relatively seamless, again, because of this descending chromatic motion there in the bass. So let's hear this just one more time. So here we are in the A section. 1 chord. Augmented. Now we go, okay, yeah, actually here. I forgot to change that. Now, actually, I did want to change up the bass a little bit. So I went straight to the 4 chord instead of holding the D flat pedal longer. So yeah, 4 chord there in the bass. 2, 5, that's the 1, 4 to the 1, sharp 2 or 4 of B major going to the B major chord, then D major, going to A flat, back to D flat. So the bass is going da 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 da. So that tritone motion is then followed up with a really comfortable 5 to 1 motion, right? Okay, then the B section. Okay, there we go. So again, we have some modal mixture going on here, and I wanted to, start things nice and light and almost predictable in a way, like more traditional. But after that, I knew I did want to start, adding some spice and color in there. So let's quickly go over this. So we start with the 4 chord, resolving to the 1/6. Then we have the 2 chord, resolving to the 1 chord, which is not a very typical classical thing, but it still works. But now here's where we start to throw in more of the modal mixture. So we have the B major chord, which is basically the 4 of the following chord, which is G flat. So 4 to the 1 in G flat. Then we go down to A flat minor to D flat. And here, this A flat to D flat is special because it's actually the 2, 5, 1 in G flat major. So if we think in the context of G flat major, the A flat minor to the D flat is the 2 to the 5, and then the G flat would be the 1 for this moment here. So yeah, I kind of wanted to do another sort of descending motion here. The bass kind of goes G flat, F, E flat, D flat, B, B flat, A flat, D flat. Very, very common actually in even pop music. They do this quite a bit. But you noticed here in the second half of the phrase, this is where that modal mixture comes in. So that B major going down to that G flat. So that's that 4 to 1 in G flat. And then we have that 2 to the 5. And then we go back to the G flat, which is, again, doubling not only as the 1 chord for this A flat minor, D flat, G flat motion, but it's also starting the second half of the phrase back on the 4 chord of D flat major. So now we're on starting the same way. It's all the same until the last 2 chords, which is basically an E major chord. And this is kind of just that intermediary chord. Like I knew I wanted that color in there. And again, it's this tritone motion of the B flat in the bass down to the E, right? So, the end of the A prime section, we went from D down to A flat. Here we're going from B flat down to E. So another tritone motion from here to here. Very unrelated chords. But it works because it kind of puts our expectations up in the air and we're just like, wait, where is this going to go, right? It feels like it's going to take a completely different turn because we haven't heard this E major chord before. So where's it going to go next? And then we get this answer right following this by going back to the B flat. But this time we're settled. We know we're going to be settled into E flat major because the B flat has a dominant 7th. There's actually the A flat in there, that minor 7th, to create that 5 to 1 sort of pull. So I really wanted to treat this E major chord sort of as that, like, oh, where's this actually going to go? I have no idea where this is heading towards, right? And theoretically, it also works a little bit because this E chord has that E natural in it, which then can step a semitone down to an E flat, which is actually B flat sus4 before resolving to the B flat 7. So it kind of goes E natural on the top. We then have E flat on the top, which is the B flat sus4 before resolving to the B flat. So again, it's sort of this chromatic motion of E, E flat, D for those 3 chords, which I really like. So yeah, that's kind of how that works. And then we move on to the C section where we're completely in E flat major all the way until the end of the piece. So let's have a listen to that. B section one more time. So. Here's the E chord. Here's the modulation to E flat. All right, there we go. So let's quickly go over this C section here. So it is actually quite a bit more diatonic compared to the B section, which I guess maybe I just did subconsciously because the B section has so many twists and turns. I knew I wanted the C section to be a little more stable and really just establish that chorus feel, keep things a bit more simple. So yeah, we're in the key of E flat major now. I'm going to change my ChordieApp to E flat here. There we go. So we're going from 5 flats to 3 flats, which I think when you have less flats, it's a little bit more of an open color, whereas when you have more flats, more sharps, it kind of darkens the overall feel of the piece. So here, when we're back to 3 flats instead of 5 flats, there's a bit more of that sun poking up from the clouds, if you will. And that's kind of what I was envisioning when writing this section. So we start in the key of E flat, then we go up to 1-6. So one of my favorite chord progressions, 1 to 1-6 to 4 to 5, right? So da 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 da. Same progression. Da 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 da. Now here's that little transition chord, secondary dominant from the B flat. The bass moves up chromatically to B natural, then to the C. But here, instead of just having the bass move, because that would be a bit weird, I committed to the B on the bottom and actually did a G7 on top of the top of the B, which is the 5/7 of the following chord, with being C minor. So 5/7 of the 6th chord going to 6, and now we're committed to the 6th chord. So now we have another secondary dominant here. E flat 7 over B flat, which then resolves to the A flat, because again, E flat is the dominant of A flat, right? So we have that. Back to the 1 chord, but it's in first inversion, so it doesn't feel complete yet. Then we keep going down with the bass, down to F. So here in line 3, we're going C, B flat, A flat, G, F, basically stepping down the E flat major scale, right? So 6th chord. There we go. We have that 5/7 of 4, resolving to the 4. Back to 1 in first inversion. Now the 2 chord to 5. But instead of committing to the full 5 chord right away, we do a sus chord because I want the overall feeling to still be suspended. And then as a quick transition chord, I step up chromatically again to that G7 over B, back to the C minor, again as another secondary dominant. And then again that G7, which is again that dominant of C minor. And then we go back down to the F minor one more time for the final 3 chords. Da, 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 da. So 1-6-4 to the 5/7 to the 1, which is where the intro starts. And then the outro, where the outro begins. And the outro is very, very simple. People have mentioned to me that it sounds more Disney, the outro, so sure. We have the 1 chord, and then there's that secondary dominant again with that D flat, because it's the 5 of the 4 chord going to the 4 chord. And again, we have this bass going E flat, D flat, C, right? So 1, and then 5/4/2 of the 4 chord going to the 4 chord, 4/6. Then a little more modal mixture here, so with the parallel minor, right? With the A flat minor chord there in first inversion, stepping down chromatically to the 1-6-4 to the 5/7 to the 1. And that's basically how I wrote this piece. So we didn't really talk much about melody in this piece, but that's mainly because I think melody is one of those things where you kind of just you come up with it, and there's certain like rules to it, certain guidelines you can follow, but it's more of a spontaneous thing. And if you guys want, I can do a separate video talking about melody. I have tons of videos on melody on the channel already, but I wanted to go over the specific chord progression for this piece because this is generally how I write a lot of my Mario style music, and these are a lot of the devices that they actually use in the music as well. A very diatonic bass, so it keeps the listener engaged, and it's somewhat predictable and traditional, but then they throw in these modal mixture elements of secondary dominance or extensions with jazz chords or flat 6, flat 7s, minor 4s, things like that to really keep you on your toes and add some color and spice. And I usually like to think of it as kind of a 70-30 in terms of diatonic and non-diatonic chords. So if you can have 70% of the piece settled in a diatonic bass, then you can use the other 30% to basically throw in some spice here and there to keep things interesting and balanced, right? But yeah, that's kind of the music theory behind this. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions. This is super fun for me. And again, if you want to kind of dive into the nitty gritty behind it, you want some of those rock solid practical tips on how to actually write more in the style of Disney and Nintendo, then I would love to give you that free guide going over those 5 key components that you need to know in order to make your music sound whimsical and magical and really evoke that timeless sound. I want to give it to you completely free. Just click the first link in the description below and you can grab it as my thank you for checking out this video today. I really appreciate it. I'll catch you in the next one and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.